Well, we got quite the show for you guys this week. We're going to talk a little bit about the news, obviously. We're going to do a little bit of a preview on the first real weekend of Carnival events, do a little behind the scenes at Empanola with their guava king cake delectable thing, and some other stuff. So grab a beer and stay tuned. Let's get into it. I'm John Stanton, editor of Gambit, and this is The Get Down. This last week was a remarkably quiet week, really. Also the first week in years that we've gone where there hasn't been some kind of a weird scandal or drama involving the government, sort of. And to get to that, one of the things that has been happening this week has been there's been a remarkable push on social media by former members of the Office of Resiliency to try to get their jobs back. As you may recall, towards the end of last year, they were laid off as part of a broader cost-cutting push by the incoming Moreno administration to get the city's books in order. And, a lot of stuff was done through that office that was very popular. There was some recycling programs, things like that. And I think it took a lot of those folks a little off guard that they got laid off. The administration, for its part, has said that all the programs that it does and money that it manages will continue to be operated by the city, but just by different people, more or less, and a smaller operation than it was. It remains to be seen whether or not the Moreno administration will be committed to the things in it. If I had to guess, I would say probably yes. Most of the things that office was responsible for were the sorts of programs that she has supported throughout her career. So I'd be really shocked if the programs themselves ended up getting cut, but I would also be super shocked if most, if not any of those people end up getting their jobs back, but some may. So we had that. Mayor Moreno obviously was inaugurated last week as along with the city council, and they got pretty much right to work. She signed a series of executive orders, changing some things in the city, while the city council began its work on confirmation of 13 of her department heads and other folks that are now covered by confirmation hearings. It's the first time that New Orleans government has ever had anything like that. And it's a great way to create transparency and accountability. It's a bit like what we did with our issue last week, where we talked with the city council members and with Mayor Moreno about what their priorities are and kind of just laid them out like that. By getting them on record saying what they want to do and what they plan on doing and what they see are the major issues and challenges facing the city in the case of the politicians, or the departments in case of those folks that are getting confirmed, it allows both the city council, but also more importantly, the public, to hold them accountable and to hold them to task and say, okay, well, you said you were going to do X, Y, and Z, and that these were the big issues that faced your department or the council or whatever. Where are you at in doing them? And it's a good benchmark to create at the beginning of an administration. So that happened. Also, Joe Giarrusso, who is now the CAO of the city, announced that they were dramatically cutting back on spending for Gallier Hall festivities during Mardi Gras. Last year, the city spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a very lavish party for elite people, because regular people just can't go into Gallier Hall at that time. This year they're going to spend, I think he said $40,000 is what their budget's going to be. It's a much, much smaller budget, which fits in line again with some of the fiscal issues that are facing the city and the Moreno administration's sort of effort, at least here at the front end, to not look like they are, telling people to do one thing but themselves doing another. So that is a positive thing. And I'm joined by Jake, Sex Panther Clap, our music writer and commentator here at Gambit. How you doing, Jake?
I'm good, John.
Yeah,
I'm great.
See, very, very.
Hi, John.
Oh, don't do that. That that ASMR thing makes God, it just So let's get out of that very quick.
Yes.
We got some good stuff coming up this week, though. The Putumayo Festival is happening, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of in conjunction with the Folk Alliance International, this large nonprofit organization that is very focused on folk music around the world, is having their annual conference here, January 21st through the 25th. the last time they were here, which was right before the pandemic in 2020, massive festival. They had 3,000 people attend. It was like one of their largest ones. They're back in town now, and there's something like 150 official showcases of performers performing, 125 panels and events and things like that. So there's this really big conference of folk musicians happening downtown coming up. And then you'll see some smaller events happening around the city that's kind of taking advantage of all these people being in town. One of those is the Putumayo Celebrate the World Festival, which is happening, Sunday, January 25th, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Broadside. Are you familiar with Putumayo?
I am indeed. Yeah.
So Putumayo has been around for more than 30 years. It is really well known for putting together these compilations of world music. And they've put out more than like 400 of these albums over the years. And like, you'll see them in like gift shops and CD stores. And now they're mostly digital, but like just covers the whole range of genres from around the world. Well, for a while, Putumayo was based here. The owner and founder of the group, Dan Storper, really loved New Orleans. And in the late 2000s, he moved here. He moved the headquarters here. Putumayo kind of moved their headquarters back to Vermont in like 2024. But Dan continued to stay in New Orleans, and he passed away last year. Yep. So Putumayo decided this year they wanted to kind of celebrate Dan, celebrate global folk music, and kind of celebrate New Orleans a little bit too by having this festival at the Broadside. Performing is going to be Senegalese Afropop musician Chike Ibrahim, a fiddler vocalist from the Micmac nation Morgan Toney, Cuban singer-songwriter Niver, a Sabertooth Swing, which is a trad jazz group here in New Orleans, and a few other people. But yeah, it's $20, family friendly. It's in the afternoon, so it should be a nice little like global music afternoon.
And when your story on the conference, the folk music conference, there was a quote that really struck me, and I think that Putumayo really kind of exemplifies that, which is that it's not what I think a lot of people kind of sometimes think of. Like, it's not like, Joan Baez drunkenly strumming the guitar, right? Yeah. Like, folk music is like the music of people from all over the world.
Place. Yeah. So, and you can really kind of tell that because the keynote speakers at the conference this year are Big Frida and Tank Ball from Tank and the Pangas. They're going to be having a conversation about music there. And so I asked Jennifer Rowe, who's the executive director of Folk Alliance International, about that. And she was like, well, folk music is the music of your home, you know, and for a lot of New Orleanians, it's hip hop and bounce, it's rhythm and blues, it's blues music, and then you go to cultures around the world, and folk music has their own, own taste and spin, and it is not, as great as it is, it's not just Woody Guthrie or Appalachian music or things like that. A lot of people tend to think of that's one of the cool things about having a Folk Alliance here with this conference. It's just such an expansive thing, and New Orleans being able to host that, there's just a lot of threads and background here that kind of come together. So cool stuff going on.
And stay tuned right now for an inside look at Empanola's king cake. It's a guava flavored king cake that one of the owners gave us a little insight on.
Hello, welcome to Empanola's Kitchen. My name is Jimena Urrutia. I'm one of the owners of Empanola, and we're inviting you all as we present our king cake. Our king cake is quite special because it brings a little bit of our Latin American heritage into a New Orleans classic of the carnivals. So we wanted to teach you something about our king cake today. Our king cake is made with a brioche dough. We're combining flour with sourdough. It also has yogurt that gives our king cake a little bit of acidity, vanilla notes, lots of eggs, and butter. Tips for brioche dough. Brioche dough requires a lot of kneading to release all that gluten that will give our king cake that particular taste. So good thing about us doing empanadas also is that we are kind of dough experts. We brought this machine actually from Italy, where my sister-in-law is from. So when the dough is rested, the dough will go back and forth till it reaches the desired width and filled with our delicious guava and cream cheese mix. We roll the king cake in a traditional king cake shape. The king cake will be baked and then decorated with a lime juice cream cheese frosting and sprinkled with some golden, purple, and green confetti. There has to be a shot of you guys eating it.
I am joined now by Will Coviello, our arts entertainment editor, and it is the kind of the really beginning of actual carnival season, or full weekends of carnival-related activities.
Yeah, Carnival's going, but I mean, I do feel like Chewbacchus with its just size and largesse kind of turns the corner on like the big stuff.
Right.
So yeah, so that's coming up Saturday.
And Chewbacchus is part of a, I feel like a bit of a broader kind of a thing that's been happening over the last 10 years or so, maybe, of like a lot more like walking crews going like in those couple of weeks before the two big weeks with the parades and all that, like floats.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these ideas have been kind of live with one crew and then they jump. I mean, this is going to be their 15th parade, so I mean, they've been around for a while. But they really exploded the idea of like any little any small crew could just form and get under the umbrella. And then, so like now we have several other crews that are just that, like a banding together of small groups forms a parade. So we have like Mosaic, which is like a dozen crews. And then also this week on Friday is going to be Le Fou de Carnival, which just grew. They're now like 8 little groups. But yeah, now it seems that like any bunch of groups that can find a day on the calendar they like can put together a parade.
Yeah. There's like we got a couple of weeks of it too. Like next week is going to be.
So then following that, we get Bohème, which has gotten huge on Friday night, and then Crew de Vue on Saturday. Maybe Delusion's gonna follow it if that happens, and then T-Rex the next day. Like when Chewbacchus first started, they were looking for their place, and they tried to piggyback with some other crews until they finally got their own night, And I think that's the thing is like if you're putting together a parade, when are you gonna go? Because like you're getting ahead of like all the final things, so you're gonna be in January. It's gonna be cold.
Well, and because everybody is still doing it like kind of down in like the Marigny like quarter area. So like, because it used to be that there were a lot of these sort of like walking crews and a bit DIY kind of stuff in the different neighborhoods in New Orleans.
Like Crew of Drew always was out at the lakefront.
Right.
Yeah, right. There are definitely fewer small parades outside of the Bywater Marigny quarter.
Yeah. So yeah, but it's interesting that sort of is a thing that's come back. I think people really like it feels like Chewbacchus, 10 or 15 years ago was kind of a thing. Almost it felt like you'd go like there wasn't that big of crowds. It almost felt a bit like it was for the neighborhood, and like that was kind of the deal, especially when it was like really in the Bywater. And now it's like the whole city shows up for it.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, I think two things really help. I mean, one is that like New Orleans get used to like habits. So like early on, they used to change the route a bit year to year. And now that they've been on this solid like Franklin and St. Claude, Elysian Fields across the quarter, like everybody knows where it is. And like that just, it's like, but I swear if you moved it, like if they went like, Royal Decatur or something, like I'm sure the crowds would like go down for a couple of years just out of force of habit. But yeah, no, now it's like you can, no matter where you are in Chewbacchus, like it's like several people deep. And, you kind of can't just roll up to the front like 5 minutes before they, start.
There's actually even like I have a friend of mine, Steve, who's coming down from DC with his sons. So like their tourists are now coming for Chewbacchus, which is kind of crazy. It's
Yeah,
becoming a draw for outsiders.
And I'm sure it's due to the internet. I mean, if you're into that kind of stuff or sci-fi or there's crossover with the Comic-Cons and whatnot, I'm sure you find Chewbacca's pretty fast.
So is there anything that you're looking forward to with it this year, or any notable stuff?
Yeah, actually, I mean, Chewbacca's is kind of having an internal year. One of their overlords is stepping down, so Richard Riggs is going to be the king of the parade this year. But they are kind of calling that another system reset. Unplug it, plug it back in, start over. But there's going to be an event around Washington Square. So there's a little spectacle this year that's going to happen, a little surprise.
Oh.
That'll be cool. It's going to be 125 crews, and then at least a dozen of them are new. So yeah, it's a big bunch of.
So it's like 17 hours of a parade basically this year. So good luck with that, guys.
Yeah, good luck.
All right, well, appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Cool, man.
Finally, and another thing. This week I want to talk about something that JP Morrell, the president of the city council, spoke to in our interview with him for our issue on the inauguration. And that is that he is, in addition to continuing some of the work on transparency and obviously helping the mayor deal with all the problems facing the city, is also going to be looking forward at some potential problems coming down the pike. These all involve high-tech industries, one of which is Waymo, which is a driverless cab company, which has started some limited operations in the city. Arguably, to me, the dumbest idea ever, because New Orleans streets are just not set up for regular drivers, let alone computers that have no idea what's going on. And can't tell a pothole from just a slick piece of pavement during a rainstorm. So I don't know how that's going to work out in the end. But this is an important thing because for far too often, really since the Reagan administration, in the United States generally, but particularly here in New Orleans, government has basically been on the defensive and in terms of how it operates. And a lot of that has to do with budget cuts and tax reductions for rich people and a lot of these other things that have limited it. But it's also this sort of like weird move away from the idea that government should be out there actively working on problems before they become problems and making life better for its citizens. And what that's ended up resulting in is huge problems with our infrastructure, with the roads, water pipes, the electrical system, schools, you name it. Everything is a mess. So government is constantly in this process of being reactive and trying to fix issues that are huge problems in our lives right now. And that leaves the door wide open for bad actors to come in and find new places where they can exploit for money, as we saw over the last few years with the short-term rental industry like Airbnb. They came into New Orleans. There were absolutely no regulations on the books, and they have pillaged our city. And not only does it harm existing industries, in the case of Airbnb, that is, obviously things like hotels and bed and breakfasts, but it's also really hurt our culture and our city and our community by raising rents, by displacing Black New Orleanians, and by generally changing the makeup of our neighborhoods. Same can be said for Uber and other things like that, where like Uber basically crippled United Cab. The city council was always very late to deal with these things and ended up having to reactively try to deal with the problems that were being created. JP is looking forward and saying he's going to try to regulate Waymo now before they actually get started in any kind of real scale in the city. And he's also looking at two industries that are very dangerous, in my opinion, which are the AI data centers and crypto mining operations. Both of these industries promise lots of things. They promise you're going to have new jobs, you're going to be new tax base, that they're potentially going to help bring in better energy systems and those kind of things into a community. And time again, what we've actually seen are not very many jobs as they promised materializing, a lot less tax revenue. People's power bills skyrocket as a result of these operations. And in most cases, we've seen environmental problems in the communities that they are directly in, as well as those that surround them. And with big parts of the East sort of open without a lot of population living in them, these are the kinds of places that you could see someone trying to set these kind of operations up in. And of course, that would end up disproportionately affecting majority Black and Asian parts of our community, and in general, just really creating huge problems. And while these industries may be able, in theory, to operate in some manner which does not cause environmental degradation and which does make good on the promises they make in terms of jobs and taxes, the only way that's going to happen is if government first sets up the rules for how they have to play. And so I think it's a very, very good thing that he's trying to keep at least one eye on the future while still trying to deal with our current problems. That'll do it for me for this week. Make sure to go and smash the like button and just give it all that dirty, dirty love that you have. Go to bestofneworleans.com and join the crew of Gambit to help support our journalism. And be sure to check out the website on the regular to keep up on the latest news on entertainment and politics in the city.